Hey, there, I'm Emma. My story starts when I was 27, at a friend's birthday bash. That's where I first locked eyes with Jake. He stood out in the crowd, tall and with a smile that could light up a room. He worked in finance, something with stocks, I guess. He approached me with a confidence that was hard to ignore, and we hit it off instantly. It was all laughs and shared interests. I remember thinking, wow, this guy is something special. We started dating, and it was like living a fairy tale. Jake was all about grand gestures. I'd find bouquets of roses at my doorstep, surprise dinner dates at fancy restaurants. He was full-on Prince Charming. But it wasn't just the material stuff. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. But looking back, there were signs I wish I hadn't ignored. One evening, as he handed me yet another extravagant gift, I tried to protest. "Jake, this is too much. You really don't have to," I said, feeling a bit overwhelmed. He just chuckled, "Emma, nothing's too much for you. I want to give you the world." It was sweet, but a bit intense. Fast forward a year, and we're getting hitched. Our wedding was a dream, beautiful venue, perfect dress, the works. But amidst the celebration, I caught glimpses of something else. Jake's mom, Evelyn, was there, of course. Dressed impeccably, she had this air of superiority. She made comments on everything, from the flower arrangements to the way I held my bouquet. "Emma, dear, make sure you're smiling properly for the photos," she'd say with a critical eye. It felt more like a photo shoot than my wedding day. After the wedding, things took a turn. Jake's obsession with material possessions became apparent. He bought an expensive car, but it was more a trophy than a vehicle. I once suggested we take it for a spin. "Emma, we can't. It's not just a car. It's a status symbol." "What if something happens to it?" he said, almost panicking at the thought. It felt ridiculous. This car, meant for driving, was just sitting there, untouched. Another time, we argued about it. "Why have it if you never use it, Jake? It's just sitting there, gathering dust." He retorted sharply, "You just don't get it, Emma. It's about status, about showing the world who we are." It was like talking to a wall. Our conversations started to feel hollow, more about things than us. Visiting Evelyn's house was like stepping into another world. She lived alone, but her place was filled with expensive, unused stuff. Everything was covered in sheets, like they were too precious to be exposed to air. I remember asking Jake about it once, "Why does your mom cover everything? It's creepy." He shrugged, "She says it's to keep them in mint condition. You know how she is about her things." It hit me then, Jake's obsession with material things wasn't just his, it was a family trait. I felt like I was living in a museum, not a home. The warmth we had was replaced by cold, hard things. And the worst part? I was starting to feel like just another one of Jake's prized possessions. One evening, I came home to find Jake standing in the living room, admiring a new, absurdly expensive-looking vase. "Emma, check this out. It's a 19th century antique. Cost a fortune, but it's worth every penny," he said, his eyes gleaming with pride. I looked at the vase, then back at him. "Jake, where are we even going to put this? It doesn't fit with anything we have." He shrugged off my concern. "It's not about fitting in, Emma. It's about having the best. You need to start appreciating these things." His tone was dismissive, like my opinion didn't matter. This wasn't the Jake I married. Then there was the incident with the living room furniture. Jake brought home a set of chairs and a sofa that looked more like art pieces than something you'd actually sit on. I remember saying, "Jake, these look great, but are they even comfortable? Our old couch was so cozy." He fired back, "Comfort? Emma, you need to see the bigger picture. This is designer furniture. We can't just think about comfort." I tried sitting on one of the chairs, only to get a stern look from him. "Careful. Do you know how much that costs? We can't risk damaging it." Our conversations started to revolve around the price and prestige of things, rather than our day-to-day life. It was all about what we owned, not how we lived. I felt like a visitor in my own home, tiptoeing around these expensive treasures. The dining room was another example. Jake replaced our old dining table with a massive, ornate one that looked like it belonged in a castle. "Jake, this table is huge. It's just us two. Why do we need something so grand?" I asked, feeling out of place in my own dining room. He just laughed. "Emma, you need to think big. This is how successful people live." I missed our old table. It had scratches and stains, sure, but each one had a story, a memory. This new one felt cold and impersonal. The final straw was the art. Jake started buying paintings. I'm no art critic, but even I could tell they were more about price tags than passion. "Another painting, Jake? Do you even like these?" I questioned, staring at the latest addition to our gallery. He responded, almost robotically, "It's not about liking, Emma. It's an investment. It shows we have class." I realized then that our home wasn't ours anymore. It was a showcase for Jake's wealth and status, a place where things mattered more than people. It was around this time that things between Jake and me really started to unravel. We were drifting apart, and it felt like we were living completely separate lives under the same roof. One day, I tried to have a heart-to-heart with him. I found Jake in his office, surrounded by his precious collections. "Jake, we need to talk," I began, feeling a knot in my stomach. "This isn't the life I envisioned for us. Our home feels like a cold gallery." He barely looked up from his papers. "Emma, that's just how it is when you move up in the world. You need to adjust." His words stung. "Adjust? Jake, I feel like I'm living with a stranger. You care more about your things than us." Jake finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "Maybe you're the one who's changed. You used to admire my ambition." It was like talking to a wall. He just couldn't see how his obsession with material things was tearing us apart. Then came the crystal set incident with his mom, Evelyn. She'd come over one day, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have a nice family dinner. I decided to use the crystal dining set Jake's grandmother had left him. It was beautiful and, I thought, perfect for a special family dinner. Big mistake. As soon as Evelyn saw the table, her face turned red with anger. "What on earth are you doing, Emma? Using the crystal set for a casual dinner? Are you out of your mind?" I was taken aback. "Evelyn, it's just a dinner set. I thought it would be nice to use it for once." Jake walked in, and instead of backing me up, he sided with his mother. "Emma, you should have known better. These are not for everyday use. They're valuable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Valuable? Jake, they're just collecting dust in a cabinet. What's the point of having them if we never use them? His response was curt. "It's about preserving their value, Emma. Not everything has to be used." That was the moment I realized our relationship had hit rock bottom. Jake and his mother were more concerned about preserving things than enjoying them or nurturing our relationships. From that point on, things only got worse. Jake became more distant, and I felt lonelier than ever in our perfect home. His priorities were clear, and sadly, our marriage wasn't one of them. I decided to file for divorce. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed. After the finalization of my divorce, I felt a profound need to escape, to find solace away from the chaos that had engulfed my life. Seeking a fresh start, or at least a temporary respite, I planned a solitary trip to the seaside. It seemed like the perfect way to celebrate my newfound freedom and to reflect on the tumultuous journey I had just endured. 1 week into my serene escape, while I was lounging on the beach, my phone erupted with the harsh ring of an incoming call. The screen displayed Jake's name, stirring a whirlwind of emotions within me. With a heavy sigh, I answered, bracing myself for what was to come. The moment I greeted him, Jake's voice, thick with fury, boomed through the phone. "Emma, what the hell have you done to my house? My paintings, my furniture, everything's ruined. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. Jake, what are you talking about? I've been at the sea for a week. I haven't been anywhere near the house. His accusations grew louder, more frantic. Don't play games with me, Emma. This has your spite written all over it. Flustered and shaken, I struggled to make sense of his words. Jake, I swear, I haven't done anything. I don't know what's happened, but it wasn't me. He hung up abruptly, leaving me in a state of shock and confusion. Panic set in, and I hastily packed my belongings, cutting my trip short. The drive back home was agonizing, filled with a mix of fear and dread about what I would find. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Upon arriving home, the scene that greeted me was beyond anything I had imagined. The living room, once a pristine showcase of Jake's expensive tastes, was in utter disarray. The designer furniture was scratched and damaged, and the paintings that Jake had so meticulously selected were torn and defaced. It was a scene of deliberate vandalism, a targeted destruction of the material possessions he had valued so highly. I stood amidst the chaos, struggling to process the extent of the damage when my phone rang again. This time, it was Evelyn, Jake's mother. Her voice oozed with a vindictive satisfaction as she spoke. I hope you're happy now, Emma. Seeing all of Jake's precious things destroyed must be quite satisfying for you. Stunned, I managed to reply, Evelyn, what are you talking about? Did you do this? Her laughter was cold, devoid of any remorse. Well, I couldn't let you enjoy all these things after the divorce. I thought I'd take them away from you, just like you took my son away. I couldn't help but nervous laugh. Evelyn, you've made a terrible mistake. The court awarded these items to Jake, not me. You've destroyed your own son's property. There was a moment of silence as the truth sank in. No, that can't be. They were supposed to be yours, to punish you. The call ended abruptly, leaving me in a state of shock. Reeling from the shock of Evelyn's confession and the state of my home, I was trying to make sense of it all when my phone rang again. It was Jake. Bracing myself for another round of accusations, I answered. Emma, this is not over. You'll pay for what you've done, he ceded without any greetings. Jake, listen to me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Your mother just called. She admitted to destroying your stuff, thinking it was mine. There was a pause on the line, a silence filled with disbelief. What? My mother? No, you're lying. She wouldn't do something like that. I felt a surge of frustration. Why would I lie about this, Jake? She thought she was getting back at me for the divorce. She didn't know the court awarded those items to you. The skepticism in his voice was palpable. I don't believe you. She wouldn't. Check your mail, Jake. I recorded a phone conversation with her in which she admitting everything. Listen to it yourself. Another pause followed, longer this time. If this is true, Emma. It is true, Jake. Your mother made a huge mistake. The call ended abruptly, and I was left standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of Jake's prized possessions, feeling a bizarre mixture of vindication and sadness. A few hours later, Jake called back, his tone now a mix of anger and confusion. I heard the record. I can't believe she would go this far. This changes things. I need to deal with her. Yeah, you do. And Jake, I had nothing to do with this. I hope you understand that now. The situation quickly escalated into a legal mess, with Jake deciding to sue his own mother. I watched the whole drama unfold with a sense of irony. It was almost poetic justice, the woman who raised a son to worship material things now being sued by him for destroying those very things. Jake called me a few days after he filed the lawsuit, sounding all worked up. Emma, can you believe this? I'm suing my own mother. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, Jake, looks like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You and your mother are more alike than you think. He didn't find it amusing. This isn't a joke, Emma. She destroyed property worth $90,000. Oh, I know it's serious. But come on, Jake. You're suing your mom over things? Didn't you learn anything from our divorce? He was silent for a moment, probably not expecting my blunt response. I have no choice, Emma. She went too far. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. You always have a choice, Jake. You chose things over people, and look where it got you. The court sessions were a spectacle. Jake, usually so composed, was now embroiled in a bitter legal battle with Evelyn. She seemed to fluctuate between regret and stubbornness. I bumped into Jake outside the courtroom once, and I couldn't resist a jab. How's it feel, Jake? Taking your own mother to court? He looked defeated, a shadow of his former self. I never wanted it to come to this. I scoffed. What did you expect? You and your mom, always placing things above everything else. The judge eventually ruled in Jake's favor. Evelyn was ordered to pay a full sum for the damages. When Jake called to tell me about the verdict, I felt no sympathy for him. So, you won. Happy now? I asked, my tone laced with sarcasm. It's not about winning, Emma. It's a mess, he replied, sounding drained. Maybe now you'll understand, Jake. Life's about more than just stuff. You and your mother, you really deserve each other. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Watching Jake and his mother entangled in this legal and emotional chaos, I realized how far I'd come from being part of that world. After the whole lawsuit drama, things calmed down, but the air was still thick with tension and unresolved feelings. Jake and his mother were no longer on speaking terms, and the once grand and proud home now felt more like a battleground. A few weeks later, I ran into Jake at a local coffee shop. It was an awkward encounter, but I couldn't resist striking up a conversation, curious about how he was coping. Hey, Jake, how's life treating you after the big court drama? I asked, unable to hide the sarcasm in my voice. He looked up, weary and deflated. Emma, it's been tough. Mom and I haven't spoken since the verdict. I sipped my coffee, trying to mask my indifference. Well, what did you expect? You sued your own mother. He sighed, running his hands through his hair. I know, but she crossed a line. It's complicated. I shrugged. Seems pretty straightforward to me. You both worshipped material things, and look where it got you. Jake looked down, the weight of the situation sinking in. I guess I never realized how far we'd gone until it was too late. I couldn't help but feel a hint of satisfaction seeing him finally confront the consequences of his and his mother's actions. Sometimes, Jake, you have to lose things to understand their true value. And I'm not just talking about money or stuff. He nodded, a somber look in his eyes. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us, about my mom, about what really matters. It's a hard lesson to learn, I replied, finishing my coffee. But maybe now you can start focusing on what really counts in life. As I stood up to leave, I looked at Jake, once so proud and confident, now humbled by his own actions. Take care of yourself, Jake. And maybe try caring about people more than things. Walking away, I felt a sense of closure. The whole ordeal had been a roller coaster of emotions, but it also served as a stark reminder of what happens when material possessions take precedence over relationships. It was a chapter of my life that I was more than ready to leave behind. After everything that had happened, my life took a turn for the better. I became tougher, more determined, and I relished the freedom I had gained from the shackles of my former life. I had no regrets, no sympathy for Jake or his mother, and I was enjoying every moment of my new, simpler life. One evening, while having a casual dinner at my comfortably modest home with my friend Sarah, the conversation turned to Jake and his mother. Can you believe Evelyn had to get a job to pay back the $90,000 she owes Jake? I said, shaking my head in disbelief but with a smirk on my face. Sarah laughed. It's like a soap opera, but you can't make this stuff up. She really shot herself in the foot. I raised an eyebrow. I know, right? After all her high and mighty act, look where she ended up. Working to pay off her own son. It's karma at its finest. Sarah nodded in agreement. And what about Jake? How's he handling all this? I shrugged, taking a sip of my wine. Who knows? Who cares? They're both out of my life, and that's all that matters. I've got my peace back, and that's priceless. We both chuckled, relishing the irony of the situation. The conversation moved on to how different my life was now, devoid of the luxury but filled with real comfort. You know, I love your place. It's so, you. No fancy stuff, just real, lived-in charm, Sarah remarked, looking around appreciatively. I grinned, feeling a surge of pride. Thanks, Sarah. That's exactly what I was going for. A home, not a showroom. It's amazing to live in a place where I can actually touch things without worrying about their price tag. We spent the rest of the evening chatting and laughing, a stark contrast to the tense, uncomfortable gatherings at my old house. It felt good to have a space that was truly mine, reflecting my personality, not my social status. As Sarah left, she said, "You seem so much happier now, Emma. It's like you've finally found your place." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. I have, Sarah. I really have. I've learned that happiness isn't about owning things, but about living life on your own terms. That night, as I sat in my cozy living room, I felt a deep sense of peace. I had escaped a life where material possessions ruled and entered a world where simplicity and comfort were my treasures. I had no regrets, only gratitude for the lessons learned and the new path I had chosen. This was my new beginning, and I was embracing it with open arms.